This is Lori Rayfeld with God, Aliens, and a Cup of Coffee. And today my guest is Cheryl Costa. If you haven't heard of her, she is incredible. She's prolific. She's written many books, including one that is pretty much a database. And what's fascinating about it would be the fact that I'd be curious to know what happened in Suffolk County on Long Island, to know what kind of UFO sightings were there. But if it's a wonderful book, I think for anyone, but mostly I think statisticians or people that like to look at the numbers and want the facts and want the data, which is hugely important because everyone's saying, where's the evidence? So, but what I'm enjoying about talking with Cheryl is that she is a New Yorker like me, and she's from upstate, and she's done a lot of many wonderful, she's just had this most amazing journey that I just want her to start talking and saying, please share your journey. But before I say that, I'm sorry, I get so excited about this. Magical Musings of a Rogue or Witch. That's my guest. And you'll have to probably put it up when you're talking. So
I'll have it right here.
Cheryl. Okay.
What would you like to know?
Okay. We were just talking earlier about, well, one thing is when you were 12 years old, you had seen a UFO. Can you share about that?
Okay, short story. It was late August, about 3-4 weeks before school started again. Sunday afternoon, we were visiting an uncle up, if you're in New York State, a little bit south of Bath, New York, in a place called Savona.
Oh.
And we were coming down off the hill. Been a wet season. The corn was higher than the car, kind of thing. And we were coming down the hill. It was a Chevy Impala. And my mother had my father stop on the dirt road, and we're literally on the side of a hill, and she points off into the western sky, clear blue sky, and then a cloud in the sky, and parked out there like a rock with this silver ball.
Wow.
Okay. And my mom pointed it out, and understand we had never had a conversation like what's going to transpire. And she said, well, it might be something the Air Force is doing. It might be a weather balloon. NASA was only about 5 or 6 years old. She said, maybe it's something NASA's doing. And then she says, it could be people from another world. Whoa, the 12-year-old goes, whoa, what's this? And I got my brothers and sisters are toddlers, so they're like out of the conversation. So we sat there and talked about it for a few minutes, and my father restarted the car. We got down to the bottom of the hill, turned left to head back to the hometown. And I got up in the back window. Those old Chevy Impalas had those huge back windows, right? And I got up in the window, and it's like, who are you guys? Who are you guys? And when that thing decided to leave, I watched it for another 10 minutes while I could still see it in the sky. When it decided to leave, it was one of those things. I didn't see another effect like that until the movies, like in the late 80s, early 90s, one of the Star Trek movies when they kick in the warp or something, and that effect of like bang, gone, it changes you. And of course, most people know growing up, as a teenager, mom and dad are stupid, that kind of thing. And but Mom and I developed a relationship on this topic. She'd get books at the bookstore. I'd get books at the library. If we saw a magazine, I was a boy in those days. So if we were in the barber shop and Argosy magazine had an article on UFOs, usually I snagged it or something. And so the deal was that we got to be very close. In fact, when Von Daniken's book, Cherry of the Gods, came out, this is late 60s at this point. Mom dog-eared on the top, I dog-eared on the bottom of the pages. It destroyed the book. Didn't have another sighting till Christmas Eve 1971. I was stationed in Cam Bay Air Base in Cam Bay, Vietnam. And a friend of mine and I was in a comm squadron. Okay. I was a telephone line person. I climbed telephone poles. People shoot at you on those things.
I wish I could have done something like that.
Uh, uh,
I don't know.
I let us say this
Although,
way.
although,
I
did you
enjoyed
do
the
that?
experience, but I was terrified many, many times, so
Oh my God, yeah. No, I was just going to ask you if you actually climb the poles in the dark or in the light of day.
light of day, light of day.
Okay.
And see, we didn't have an awful lot of poles to actually climb. Most of the poles,
Okay.
because it was a tropical environment, most of the poles were concrete because the wood would rot out.
Oh.
But
Hmm.
Cameron Bay was sort of like Virginia Beach. It was this huge sand dune peninsula. So while everybody else has
Oh.
got jungle clothes, we've got desert clothes. Okay, desert
Oh,
boots.
interesting.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we had a share of telephone poles, actual creosoted trees, and I could climb with. I used to climb the things with the gaffs, the little things you stick into the pole. The other thing we had access
Hmm.
to was a cherry picker cable truck. Okay,
Okay.
but what we would run up against is because it was a tropical environment and there was some really strange species of ants out there, and
Wow.
a cable went nuts. It was no good.
Hmm.
Couldn't get a phone call through. So we had a device called a breakdown box, and it was essentially full of very heavy amperage batteries. We would get on the telephone line, looking out down the cable line, and we would in the telephone center, we'd get on a line that had a really relatively good short, and we would
Hmm.
clip the breakdown things on the terminals, hit the switch, and it threw a degree of amperage across the spot where the insulation had broken down, and there was kind of like it was bleeding over, and that forced the two wires to weld themselves together. Okay, this heavy
Wow.
amperage.
Interesting.
And then what we would had a thing, it sort of sounded like a little buzzer, like a
Hmm.
little buzzer electric relay type thing, and it would sit there, and we could go out. We had a rough idea how far it was out, so we'd walk along with a little sensing block. It was about the size of a couple. Oh, it was about the size of a couple slices of bread. It was a plastic thing, fiberglass. It was on a pole, and we put it up there by the cable, and we'd walk along under the cable. And as long as you heard the zzz, 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 you knew you were getting the signal. And as soon as you got past the point where it was welded together, there was no signal. So we could literally mark the spot where this thing was, get the truck up there, especially if it's middle span, either a ladder or a truck, go up there and find out what's going on. And about 8 times out of 10, there was a bullet in there. There was a piece of shrapnel in there from a mortar shell or
Hmm.
artillery shell or something. But this particular time, we got up there. We saw ants walking on the outside of the plastic cable, and we took the sheathing off and got looked in there, and it was green from their formic acid on the copper. Okay,
Oh.
and what happened was the ants had built a nest in the cable, and nobody could figure out what's why. And at one point, remember, I'm a little airman one stripe or two striper, okay,
Hmm.
and I took some of the same kind of wire and I took it out and I tasted the insulation. I said, guys, here, taste this. And they tasted the insulation. It's sweet. I said, yeah, it's a hydrocarbon. It's like sugar. He said, that's what
Wow.
the ants are eating here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we spent a couple of days out there doing what we call a cable throw. You go back about 6 feet either way, cut the cable, and then what you have to do is you have to send one team into the telephone center to ring the wires out to your
Hmm.
spot, and you put tags on them, and then you have another team out in the field
Yeah.
sending a signal down, and we had to pick out every telephone line and give it a number and then match it up with the one from the central office. It was tedious work. It usually took about 2 to 3 days to do, depending upon the size of the
Wow.
cable.
Well, it just seems really interesting. Now, my mother's
You
husband,
didn't need to know all that. I'm sorry I told you
no,
that.
no, and for all of you out there who want to know about different things that happen, it's actually historical information because anything that even I was around, we were all around. I mean, I actually videotaped Grace Hopper at the Defense Systems Management College. She
Oh,
was the
wow.
woman that she was. What did she come up with? it was at Fortran or COBOL. She created the computer language, and this was back in the 50s. And she was in the Navy. I think she retired as a Commodore, and then they brought her back.
Oh, I think she developed Fortran.
Fortran,
If
yeah,
that's who I think it is. Yeah, I think
yeah,
she developed
yeah.
Fortran. I took that in college, you know.
Yeah. And she was the one that she was hilarious. She always had, never ask for don't ever ask for permission. Just it's easier to say you're sorry than to ask for permission. And I tried that throughout my
Forgiveness is
career.
much easier to get than permission, you know. So
Yeah, yeah. Like that's what you say, my bad. But but yeah, I had some really interesting opportunities that way while in the Air Force. And yeah, I got up to staff sergeant. Now, you had mentioned something about also being stationed in Korea. When you got to Korea, did it have a stench in the air? Like you got off the plane and it was like, the air doesn't smell very nice.
I didn't
Maybe
notice
didn't
anything
it?
like that. No.
So a lot of people thought it smelled like sewage, but I was there in like the mid '90s, and
Oh, no, no. I was there in 72. It was pretty primitive.
yeah, yeah, and it's very high tech now. So if you ever do get a chance to go back to Korea, I think you'll be
I would love
really,
to.
yeah.
Actually, I would have probably noticed that stench because what I left the base maintenance telephone squadron and I volunteered for a second overseas tour. And that actually got me out of Vietnam about 4 months early.
Wow.
Okay. And the orders came right through. And here's the reason for this. I got put up on this mobile telephone crew, a big one. It was called in the Air Force, we called these things schemes. They were designed for something. This is 71, 72 time frame.
Hmm.
In 1969 or 68, the USS Pueblo got captured by the North Koreans.
Oh,
And they put the crew in prison camp and all this kind of stuff. And it dragged on for quite a while. One of the things they found out right after the Pueblo got captured, nobody had ever really upgraded the telephone system since the Korean War.
wow.
And
Okay.
the military telephone system was primitive.
Yeah.
And so the Air Force Communications Service put a scheme in place where they were literally building a new telephone system in Korea. And so I got to be part of a field team, and we got to live on the economy, which was fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a different town as we got done with each phase of what we were doing, but it was a
Oh,
lot of fun
nice.
to.
So you really got to see a lot of the country
Oh
there.
yeah, we got to meet a lot of nice people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to eat in downtown restaurants all the time. That type of thing. Because we were literally per diem and living on the economy. It was a
Wow.
staying little hotel, little Korean hotels and everything, and it was a wonderful experience. And I'd probably still be there yet if my hometown hadn't got wiped out. So I was having too much
Wow.
fun over there.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds that way. I mean, I remember the time I was there. I was there just for a couple of the exercises that they would have over there. Now, an interesting thing I want to share with you is that in about 1969, the government had put out, I guess, a contract out for private companies to work on a project called Cobra Mist. It was in near Orford in England, and RCA, believe it or not, with Little Cute Dog, was one that was in charge of it, and they were playing around with frequencies. They were trying to make aircraft invisible to the Russians, and then something happened to it, and it made this high pitched sound, and then they found that sound did not come out of the equipment that so instead of trying to figure out what happened, they pretty much dismantled it. But there's this array, and you talking about communications, it just reminded me of it. There's this array that's out by the North Sea. It looks like a fan, and they haven't used it, but I truly believe that whatever happened uh, did something with the like a time warp or opened something up that hasn't been closed. And so that anyway, I just find that interesting that that
It
was
sounds
happening
like
during.
they were monkeying around with the same kind of stuff they monkeyed around with the Philadelphia experiment.
Exactly,
That's
exactly,
what it feels like.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, and
All the trouble they had with the Eldridge. So
oh my God, yeah, yeah. I think, it's funny. You would think that they would have put the USS Eldridge into like a part of history. Instead, I think they sold it off, and
I think it got sold to Greece.
yeah, yeah. And then from there, I think they finally sank it or whatever. My dad was on the USS Stitch, which I can't even tell you what kind of aircraft it is. I mean, ship. Um, but yeah, they sank that one in no, the waters near Florida.
Mhm.
So I guess there's a lot of sunken ships. I know they're using them now for reefs and that kind
Yeah,
of thing.
there's a lot of that.
But did you find yourself, during this time and even to look at today, do you find yourself very sensitive to the forces of nature, whatever's out there in the universe?
Well, yes and no. Um, Maternal side of my family has a trait for clairvoyance. Now,
Okay.
a lot of my cousins, my mother's side of the family, there was 13 aunts and uncles,
Wow.
and so there
Oh,
was
that's
that.
that was big back then. Yeah.
Yeah, they were, and a lot of my cousins ignored the gift if it blossomed in them.
Ah,
Okay, my brother and sister ignored the gift.
yeah.
Okay, I didn't. I embraced it. Now, my brother's in his late 50s, early 60s now. He's considerably younger than me.
Mhm.
And I think he's been trying to embrace it now
Mm.
because he's a senior. I don't want to call him a custodian, make you think he's a janitor. He's a mechanical custodian for a school district. Okay.
Oh,
So he was responsible for everything from boilers to all kinds of stuff, right? And he told me some horrendous stories about how haunted some of the older schools in town were. Okay.
mhm.
And he was incredibly sensitive to that. And he actually took me on a tour of one school just to see what I could feel. And it was let us say it this way, it was a pretty rowdy experience. And
Did you get that? Did you get the feeling from it?
oh God, I was bumping into dead teachers. I was bumping into, um, and I made notes of the names. And later, when I told my mother, she went to that school too. I told
Mhm.
her I bumped into this person and this person and this person. She says, "Oh, I had him for history. I had her for math." That kind of thing. I'm going, "Oh my goodness," And then it was funny. One of the goofy things was, think of it this way. This is I can't say it is this way, but it seemed to be. People pass and they sometimes go to the happiest point in their lives,
Mhm.
okay, or
Yeah.
some point that they enjoyed. And some of them it was in high school,
Mhm.
okay. In this particular case, this place had like one of these huge auditoriums, and the front part of the auditorium had a lobby and a box office, that kind of thing, for like when they do school plays and concerts and things, right? And my brother took me back there, and the place was loaded with 1950s greasers,
Mhm.
black leather jacket, that whole look,
Wow.
and and that was where they were all hanging out,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going, why in your afterlife are you hanging out here, But the bottom line is that school has since been it was a 100-year-old school. It was 99 years old when they demolitioned it.
Wow.
And
Mhm.
and my argument, oh, they're turning that piece of property, that whole big property, it's a huge 2 city block area, they're turning it into some kind of houses. And I asked the question, well, wait a minute, did anybody even take a thought that maybe that would cut the entities that are in the school loose?
Yeah.
And the little houses that they built there, Most of them are empty. I drove through there last year to go to a
Oh,
class reunion,
interesting.
and most of them are empty and for sale now.
Wow.
And that is telling in itself.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I know. I went to a Catholic school as a kid,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
6 years. Yeah.
unfortunately survived. I love
Yeah.
you, Sister Edith. However, you got me ready for basic training, so I love you. Uh,
Some of
yeah,
those, no, I've had drill sergeants that couldn't hold a candle to some of the
I
nuns I've had.
know, I know, I know. It's like the weirdest thing is I actually I went to St. Patrick's School, so on on my uniform I wore a green vest with a emblem of SPS, St. Patrick's School. My first assignment, well, my first 5 years in the Air Force, I was working in law enforcement, which I hated, but I was part of the 81st Security Police Squadron. So again,
Okay.
SPS became, and I'm thinking, there's a connection here. I know there is. But but when I went to Catholic school, I had a sighting of Mary, the mother of Jesus. I was walking past. We were in a line, walking past a couple of double doors, and it was in this what they called the all-purpose room. That's the room we played gym in. We did
Yeah.
the, uh, we ate lunch there, and on the other side was the main church. And I finally, after years and years, I went home and I told my mom about it. She called my grandma, who was living in Ireland at the time. This is back around in the, this must have been in about 67, 68.
Okay.
And my grandma had just retired, and she said Lori had a sighting. She saw Mary, the mother of Jesus. And I'm thinking, I thought what I saw was a statue, although it was very, very vibrant and very, very, the colors were absolutely beautiful, and all the other statues in this church were all beige, so very, very plain.
Yeah.
And I mean, I spent the rest of the day when I went to the gym class in the all-purpose room. I kind of like looked over to see the closet. Did they put it in there? Where did they put the statue?
Uh,
Um, but then I guess maybe about 5 years ago, I went back and I told them about it, and they were really surprised because they said, a lot of people when they go in an all-purpose room, they have a feeling of Mary, the mother of Jesus. And I'm like, so that kind of for me, it just corroborated it, which I was happy about. But
when I was in Catholic school, problem I had was my mother was Protestant and she married my Catholic father. And of course, in
um,
those days, you had to kind of sign a piece of paper that,
oh
your
yeah,
kids will be
yeah.
brought up Catholic and everything like
Yeah,
that.
forget your birth certificate. It's all about the baptismal certificate.
You got it. And uh, three grandparent lines coming in her family are
Yeah.
from Northern Ireland, came over from the potato famine.
Oh boy.
So on St. Patrick's Day, I'm like one of three kids in school with orange, and the Irish nuns we had just were unmerciful to us, and it was kind of strange.
Oh yeah.
Also, my situation was my friends in school. Um, I was innocent about this stuff with the clairvoyance. I would tell them what they were going to get for their birthday, and they usually got it.
Wow.
And the story got around with the nuns, and they wouldn't come near me with a 10-foot pole. And even though I went to mass every morning as a good Catholic boy,
Yeah.
I was still whispered about as the spawn of Satan. That was my nickname, and it was crazy. I got out of there at the end of my sixth grade year. I told my parents, I can't continue on with these people. Can you put me over in public school,
How many
please?
years did you spend in?
6 years of 8. Yeah.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
went, then I went to public school.
Yeah. 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 My mom had the school opened up when I was heading into second grade, so that was like 1966. So
Okay.
I spent the next 7 years in there, and then I went to public school, and that was like a culture shock. I was like, like, oh my God. But the thing I find kind of disconcerting now, because I really truly believe that, like Jesus was good, that whole thing. I just don't believe in, all the indoctrination and you know, in many cases, I think that we've been brainwashed. You know, I mean,
I wouldn't argue with that.
no, I know. I had a feeling. I had a feeling.
No, I
And
wouldn't argue with that a
yeah,
bit. You know, it's
and then
funny. I left at 17. I
mhm.
was supposed to be, everybody thought I was going to be that kid that, you know, first grade, you know, they ask a class of 60 kids, you know, what does everybody want to be when they grow up? Of course, we're in a Catholic school. So 3/4 of the hands went up, a priest or a nun or something like
Yeah,
that, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And in my case, uh, you know, usually by the time you get to high school, that filters out to one or two people, right? We had
Mhm.
like 3 girls that I went to school with. They either went to our school or went to St. Patrick's on the other side of town, or St. Mary's on the other side of town. And they became nuns.
Mhm.
Okay. And two guys that were over in St. Patrick's, one in St. Patrick's, one in St. Mary's. They went to seminary. Um,
Mhm.
I bailed out. I don't want to get into the details of why,
No, no,
but
no, that's it.
I bailed out. I was with nothing for my, I went right. I had only planned, I was supposed to go to a monastery for summer vacation when I graduated in 70.
Yeah.
And in the fall, I was supposed to start seminary.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting. And
And
one thing, my mom, when I
didn't
was in,
happen.
yeah, between third and fourth grade, my mom, I was so close to my mom. I just, the thought of her going away for a couple of months over the summer to Ireland, England, she went to France and Rome was, I just couldn't bear not being there. So I had a choice. Do I want to go with her on this trip? Or, and it would be me, my oldest sister, Chris, and my grandma, or go to go stay home with dad and eat McDonald's food. It's like, you know, we were like 8, 9. It's like, the heck with going to Europe. Let's eat French fries. But I was like, no, I gotta go. I have to go. But we hit. My grandma had been a nun for after my mom was about 5 years old when she decided to go into the convent, which was really, you know, it took me many years to say, you know, that's a little problematic to leave a child. And, you know, I still have a tough time with that. I think, you know, abandonment issues and stuff.
Yeah.
But but she lasted about 10 years and then she just got tired. She was a nurse during the workday and then she was scrubbing floors at night and whatnot. But she was very, very devout Catholic. So where did we go to when we went to all these places? Well, we went to Ireland mainly for me to meet my relatives over, because I've got quite a few relatives over there. Um, and then we went to England. I mainly wanted to find out more stuff about the Beatles because this was about
Okay.
67, 68, you know, and got to go in. They had this really mod kind of shop. And so we went in there and then we went to France and we spent the time at Lourdes. Now, one thing about Lourdes, besides the weather being really, really dreary, just kind of like England, at the time before climate change, it there was one thing that was so profoundly um, important, and I knew it was not related to religion. It was something. It was like we all got out. They gave us candles. There were thousands of us in Lourdes, and we were all singing the song Ave Maria. It became more like a chant. La 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 la, you know. And it was like the hair on my arms would go up. It was as if the universe was opening up to the frequency of all these thousands of people singing this song. I mean,
Well,
you
you
know,
sing a song with repeated phases like that. It's like reciting a mantra over and over again. No
yeah,
different than saying a rosary, same difference, you know.
yeah,
And the Buddhists, we have Om Mani Padme Hum, you know. So, yeah, yeah, I
yeah.
get that.
It's wow. Yeah, I was going to say that because you said you had worked at you were
I was an
part of
ordained Buddhist nun, and
a Buddhist
now I'm
nun.
a yogi.
Yeah. Well, so many things out there to
Well,
be.
that was the running joke with my friends for a long time. Hey, here's our friend who was a good Catholic boy in school who grew up to be a Buddhist nun. You know,
Yeah,
so.
there you go. Were you over near like what is that mountain up there? Mount Everest area?
Oh, I never went to Asia.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No,
You
I was
sort of,
I was working I was a defense contractor working in DC.
okay.
And I'd been a Wiccan priestess for better part of 20 years.
Wow.
And okay, the short story on that is I got an invitation to go to a retreat in the high Jemez Mountains of New Mexico. And I had a lot of visibility because I produced a cable television program about witchcraft. It was the first one ever done
Wow.
about witches by witches.
Oh,
And
interesting.
it was only supposed to have 6 episodes. We ended up producing 70 because of the visibility we got. Larry King showed up, Entertainment Tonight showed up.
Wow.
We had over 100 interviews in 2 years, and because we were the witches that were willing to come out and talk to you about what we really do versus what the movies tell you we do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what ended up happening was we've closed, didn't stop doing the program, and they were in reruns on cable systems in the mid-Atlantic region. And I got this invitation to go to this sort of a private retreat, and it wasn't like a flyer or a brochure. It was like a personal letter.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, God, I've had national visibility. For all I know, it's a grand necktie party,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I thought, I don't know about this. I threw the letter in the garbage can. One of my senior students fished it out. And she went back to my 105 students that I had at the time at all levels of training. And they pitched in and got up enough money to buy me an airline ticket and some spending money to go there.
Wow.
But so I'm thinking, oh, all right, I'll cash the ticket in and I'll give the money to charity or something. I'm not going to go to this thing. Then I go to this native medicine guy I know, Eastern Band Cherokee guy. He is a lawyer by trade,
Wow.
and he would represent tribal people in federal court because everything that had to go to court, because they're technically a separate nation, they
Right.
had to go through federal court. So he represented people. I called Big Bear up, and he's deceased now, but I called him up and I showed him all this stuff. And he said, let me check it out.
Mm-hmm.
About a week later, he comes back, calls me up on the phone. He says, legit. He says, go get us a couple submarine sandwiches and come on over. Let's have dinner and talk about this.
Yeah.
And he told me, I think you should go. Point one, I want you to put your affairs in order before you do go. I said, why are you expecting to get killed? And he said, you might not want to come back. So I said, okay.
Wow.
So
Now, where was this place?
it was going to be in New Mexico, halfway between Albuquerque and Santa Fe.
Okay, gotcha.
High Jemez Mountains,
Mm-hmm.
spelled Jemez. Okay, so but the bottom line was a couple of days before I went. He actually 2 days before I went, he came and knocked on the door. Wouldn't come in the apartment, just stood there towering over me, hands me a book called Spirit and the Flesh. He said, read this on your way there. You need to know what's going on. And I said, can I read it when I get back? He says, look, with layovers and everything, you'll probably have like 10, 12 hours between airports and planes. Yeah. You have plenty of time to read this. Get a seat in the back. This is before they packed the planes. Get a seat in the back of the plane, stretch out and read it. Your life might depend upon it. So I said, all right, fine, So I went, and I can't tell you about it beyond the fact that I got my spiritual butt handed to me on a platter, as they say. Wow. And I came back in those days because of my Wicca connections. Most people called me Lady Cassandra in those days. Okay. And the only people who called me Cheryl Costa, the IRS and my boss.
Those heathens will only call you Cheryl.
Okay. In fact, I almost legally changed my name to Cassandra at that point. So the deal was, I come back and I call a couple people in my little black book, and people said, call us when you get back. So I got on the phone. I said, hi, so-and-so, this is Cheryl. Right off the bat, they knew something was wrong. because I never called myself Cheryl. I would have called myself Cassie or Cassandra. And they knew something was wrong. And I was a bit of a basket case when I came back. And it all made sense while I was there, as they say. My therapist looked at me, who I was still seeing. It was a couple of years after I changed my gender. And I told her what had happened as best I could.
Mhm.
And I said, my GP says he thinks I had a couple of micro strokes. And she looked at me and she listened to me talking to her and everything. She says, I don't see any evidence of something pathological. You sat here for 2 hours explaining the whole story of what happened to you out there. She says, before I met you, I was a non-practicing Jew. She said, ever since I've known you, I've gone back to my spirituality because
Oh yeah.
clergy person, right?
Oh.
So she says, you know what I think happened? She says, I think the sky opened up and God talked to you and it fried you. She
Oh,
says,
interesting.
just roll with it.
Hmm.
And 2 years
Kind of
late,
like the Celestine prophecy, where
yeah,
you're walking down the road and you're getting all this information, and you're thinking, "What do I do with all this information?" Because it's really kind
well,
of
as my
powerful.
later I was told, it was like getting struck by lightning in the most gentle way. Um, 2 years later, I was visiting a Buddhist temple monastery out in Maryland suburbs, Orthodox Tibetan. There was a Buddhist Lama there visiting that day. A friend of mine wanted to go see him. There's 300-400 people there at the temple
Yeah.
milling around after he gave a couple big talks in the main space. And there's this reception line. My friend and I got in this reception line. And he comes along, little sawed off 5 foot nothing Tibetan guy. And he's got an entourage of monks behind him. He's coming along. He's a High Lama. And he comes along and he goes to shake hands with me. And suddenly the normal handshake turns into a European handshake. And he's right up in my face. I know you. And I said, Holiness, I've not met you in this lifetime. He says, oh, no, 2, 3, 4 times, past 400 years. I know you. And he looks at the gal next to me, shakes hands with her, and I know you too. You two hang out together lifetime after lifetime. It's so nice to see you again. And he toddles off. And his lead American monk standing there leans into me and says, I've known him 15 years. He plays it close to his chest. I've never seen him do that except 20 minutes ago to a lady from Australia in the parking lot. I would go talk to her.
Wow.
So I
Yeah.
go to talk to the man. And you have to understand what I looked like in those days. I was Miss Corporate Dress for Success. Big hair, big makeup, big nails.
Hmm.
My nickname at work at Lockheed was Napoleon in heels. That kind of thing. So I go in to see him. The monks had coached me. Oh yeah, when you're going to see the Lama, you got to get down the floor and bow and all. I said, fine, great. I get in there to do all this stuff. He busts out laughing as I'm doing it. Tells me to get up on the couch. So I get up on the couch, and I've got a book with me, and he's a notebook. Okay, and he says, so what were you raised? I said, well, I was raised Roman Catholic. Oh, I still Roman Catholic? I said, no, I've been running with the Wicca shaman types for the last 20 years. Oh, still doing the yogi stuff, huh? I said, you mean I've done this before? Are you good at it? I said, yeah, I'm really good at it. You think you learned it all in one lifetime? And we talked, what was supposed to be a 15-minute appointment went 90 minutes, gave his aid fits.
Wow.
And I'm going to say it this way, he knew me better than my mother.
Mhm.
Not Cheryl, not Cassandra, but me, who lives behind the eyes of this, the mask of this
Yeah.
flesh. Okay.
Yeah.
And I got down on my knees, looked up at him, and I said, you're a Lama. You can't lie to me. He said, no, it's against vows. I said, okay. I have indeed been a member of this lineage before. Yes, many times. I said, I've been a monk, a nun, a yogi, all these things. He says, yes, many times. Have you been my teacher before? He says, yes, many times. I said, have I been your teacher? He said, no, you're too stupid. But if it
Uh,
says anything, when you get ordained, you're supposed to stay with a master for like 8 or 10 years.
mhm.
Okay. 2 weeks after I was ordained a nun, one other quick story. I got permission to wear temporary robes. All you had to do, get the local lama's permission, which I got, and get the haircut. Okay, go see the head monk, and he'd give you the robes. Right. I went to see the head monk. He didn't like me because I was a trans person. Okay.
Yeah.
He hadn't, remember, he's an American, you know, Americans have their goofy prejudices, and he wouldn't give me a set of robes. So I'm an old theater person, so I went home and made a set. The first time I wore them to the temple, all the other monks and nuns told me, oh, you did this wrong. Oh, you did that wrong. That isn't right. This isn't right. Da, 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 da. The big Lama comes back to town about 2 months later, and everybody tattled on me to him. So I get a note from his aide, come over, he wants to talk to you. So I come in, he's making a pot of tea, and he looks at me, he says, turn around. So I turned around with my robes, figuring I'm going to get yelled at rather badly. And I get done, turn around, looked at him, and he says, so how'd you know how to make an old world cut?
Oh.
I made the robes older style like they would have had in Tibet.
Interesting.
Okay. He said, how'd you know how? You know, he said, I told you, I know you, you know. So for somebody who had always believed in reincarnation, here it was being handed to me in a technical sense. And so that was kind of wild. And then later, when I actually took serious vows about a year later, they told us you're going to be here for the next 8 or 9 years, you know, being trained. And he calls me up and says, I want you to go out in the suburbs and set up a Buddhist center out there. I said, I'm supposed to stay here for 8 to 10 years. He said, you've done this before. You're going down to the suburbs to start a center. You know? So this is what that life was like. And then about 2 years later, they sent me up to the Corning, Elmira area of upstate New York. The order was getting letters. Oh, we need somebody to marry and bury people up here. Help, you know. So he sent me. And I ended up being the chaplain for 4 hospitals within about a 30-mile radius for Buddhists, you know.
Wow.
And did that for about 2 years. But, you know, the funny thing is the only people who really came to my center, my Buddhist center, were Wicca kids. Because nobody did a marketing study from the order to find out that they were asking for a Buddhist. That's like saying UFO versus a triangle or a saucer or a ball, you know, something like that. And I get to that town and I quickly find out that it's a Theravada Zen town. Okay, for the most part. So sending me Tibetan Orthodox is like, I'll give you the Christian equivalent. Sending a Russian Orthodox priest with the big hat and the big beard to an Episcopalian town. Catholic light, you know.
Right.
That's what this amounted to, you know. Wow. So it was a good assignment. And when I went to see him, finally, after about 2.5, 3 years, about 3 years, I said, you were supposed to send me another monastic so we would be there to check ourselves and support each other. He said, I didn't, did I? I said, no, you didn't. Why? He says, consider that your mountaintop. He said, I sent you there to make friends with yourself. Did you? And I did. I told him. And then we talked about it, and I told him what my realizations had been. And he says, what has that taught you? I said, if I've evaluated everything correctly, I'm no longer qualified to be a Buddhist nun. And he looked at me, he said, you get it. He says, go back to yogi robes. And instead of burgundy and yellow and a buzz cut, I could grow my hair long, I could be married, and the robes are burgundy and white. And that's what I wear now if I do ceremony and that type of thing. Now, the trick with being that was I had no more said I was going to be going out of robes. And Linda, who was a very good friend of mine, said she wanted firsties. And basically, that's when we got into a very deep relationship. And I had to take her to my Lama, and he had to interview her because as a Nakmo yogi, she had to be as equally qualified as me. She had to be as equally qualified as me. Well, he interviewed her and came back and says, hey, she's way above you. You know, she she was extremely well-read Zen Buddhist. So this is a very Buddhist household in that context. And we check each other, and we have some very, very good monastic arguments. But the bottom line is that's the nature of my household, even though I am still a practicing priestess. It's concurrent. I can do both.
Yeah.
Is because Buddhism is really more of a technology than really a religion. So I can be this, I'm a priestess of Isis, a member of the Isis Order of Isis Rising, and not the terrorist group like Facebook thinks I'm, and Instagram think it's a terrorist group if I put up a notice for I'm going to teach class this year or something like that, and they took us down. They took us down here a couple of weeks ago because they said, we don't support terrorist organizations. And I said, Lady Isis was not a terrorist organization. But okay, that's where we are. So I'm a practicing Buddhist, and I still hold many, many vows, and I hold true to those vows. But I also teach high-end mysticism because I learned an awful lot in the Buddhist monastery for 7 years, and that just amplified the mysticism that I understood as being a senior Wiccan priestess.
Very interesting. Have you ever
And by the way, the book,
Oh,
Magical
yes, yes.
Musings of Rogue Witch. Okay, in the lineage I came up through, there was an expectation that when you retire or get to that point where you're not going to do it anymore, get out of the pastoral business, as they say, that you write your book of craft. And it could be about magic. It could be your the history of your coven. It could be your memoir of life and witchcraft. And I decided to do something very different. I decided to take on magical mechanics and make it so easy any layman could understand it. And the first draft of it I did in 2004. My adult daughter, magical adept in her own right, read it, came back to me, looked at me and said, I think this is irresponsible. I says, why? Because I made it so simple. It says, yeah, you're passing out loaded shotguns to third graders. Was her metaphor.
Yeah.
I said, I made it that easy. She says, yeah, you did. I said, okay, fine. So I put it on the shelf for about 18 months. And then one Saturday afternoon, I took it down, did a read of the thing, took it out in the backyard, put it on the grill, poured lighter fluid on it, and burnt the entire manuscript. This is the 2021 manuscript. Okay,
Absolutely.
144 pages, and I cut it. It's literally an examination of the high physics of magic, and it reads more like a book of physics than it does a religious book.
Oh, very, very, very interesting. That is a book I want on my shelf.
And what creeps people out, I was first talking about, I have a talk show in England, okay, about mysticism called Mystical Mentors. And I do it all from my living room here in Ohio, so. But and the funny thing about this is that the way I wrote the book, I started getting mail from people in England because they were the first ones exposed to it, and they could get it from Amazon like that, So they were selling in England long before people here in the States were hearing about it. And I started getting mail. In the mail, almost every one of the letters said, other than I loved it, this, it's that, oh my God, thank you for doing this. And other than that, then almost everybody said, and what was really weird was it seemed like you were in the room talking just to me.
It said what now?
They said, it seems like you were in the room just talking to me.
Wow. That is a gift. Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes we reach out for that, especially in this world of everyone being so isolated. But wow.
I essentially wrote it during the lockdown. Okay, for all intents and purposes. The essays that I made into the book, I wrote 2020 through 2021. And I wrote them for my online column I had with Wicca magazine. And then some people I was coaching through a magical year and a day kind of class type of thing. And I was putting it up on a private Facebook page for the students of this class since we were all in lockdown. In fact, I had people complaining about the lockdown. And I said, hey, welcome to monastic life. you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, it was hard on a lot of folks. There was something that you had written, let me see here, intention. It had to do with okay, the magical musing of a rogue witch. Magic is about communications, our interaction from our talking self to our younger
Se-
self,
Talking self to younger
and
self to the great consciousness. Yes.
yeah, higher for
Higher self.
manifestation. I thought that resonated with me.
Let
It
me
just
give it to you.
resonated
Let
with
me give
me.
it to you in Christian terms. Okay.
Oh, do you have to? Okay.
The universe doesn't understand our words. Okay. But our personal spiritual connection to everything, all
Mm-hmm.
that is, everywhere, every when, is that little spark of the divine we each carry, our life
Mm-hmm.
force. Okay. But it is not verbal, it is nonverbal.
Oh,
So you have to
interesting.
communicate in a nonverbal way.
Wow.
Okay.
That,
And so
yes.
basically, and to put it in Christian terms, the talking self would be Jesus. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the universe incarnate, God incarnate. Okay. The higher self would be the great God. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Consciousness, the great all that is. Okay. And the younger self in Christian terms would be the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for all we hear about give your soul over to Jesus, and if you look back through medieval art and the Bible, they always talk about the gift of the Holy Spirit, the connection to everything seems to be, and that's we see the medieval art with yads over their heads and things
Mm-hmm.
like this, you know. That's how you communicate. You can say all the prayers you want in English or French or German or Russian or whatever, and the unconscious doesn't understand that. You have to change your frame of thinking. That's why we say things like rosaries.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mantra. It's a time honored way to numb the conscious mind and all the chatter that's in it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about your school. Our Catholic priest told us to go over and visit the church and after work, after school, and meditate, be quiet with your thoughts. Okay. And he was teaching us something, that it was important to have quiet heads. Okay, to be
Yeah.
alone with our thoughts. Most people blow it off, it's boring, but that's what I learned. And in Wicca, they teach you the same thing. You have to communicate to your younger self with um, dancing, singing, drumming, visual aids like tarot cards, things like this,
Mm-hmm.
and to communicate to your younger self, which pushes it into the great consciousness for manifestation, or the other way around, drawing contemplation in to draw knowledge from all that is. Now, in a Buddhist monastery, I became very adept at meditating, and at that point, being able to, in fact, most of the magic that I talk about in here, I didn't get out of any book. I got it from there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's what blows people away. People say, where did you get that? Why isn't there more footnotes? I said, because I got it from there, and
Yeah.
that's the trick. And my lama, uh,
That
my lama
again,
looked
that,
at it and said, my God, you also wove Buddhist theory in every other line, without saying it, so.
yeah, I think that what you've got these innate gifts, and I do believe that you've figured out your way to reach out and really communicate with the uh, universe, or with the the greater consciousness that's
And
out there. And
our other life form cousins out there in the universe.
yeah,
Think about
yeah,
that a
I
second. We are
yeah,
connected to
I
the
gotta tell you,
atoms in our body are connected to everything, everywhere, every when, and
yeah,
likewise to our cousin beings out there.
yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing, just just to let you know, it's like um, I sometimes feel like when I was watching this film where these kids were following Tim Allen, who was evolving into Santa Claus, and they were all gravitating to him, and he couldn't figure out why they were all following him. And I sometimes feel like that's happened with me in regard to situations that I have been in. I'll go. I was over the past 10 years. I was selling insurance, and everything happened.
Quick question, former insurance person, property and casualty or whole life?
Whole life, whole
Okay,
life,
okay.
and health.
Term. Okay, okay. Help.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
And I like to help the people that really needed little bit,
Hmm.
were struggling. And this woman, I was actually in one of those places where it's like an apartment complex for people that I think are Section 8 or that are just poor. And this woman came running out of this room. She saw me and she said, "I need you to come here. I need you to talk to my mom, because she needs some life insurance." So I said, "Okay, that's the best way to get a lead." So I walk in there, and the room that she was in, now these rooms are very institutional, but the room that she was in, I walked in, and the light was this kind of like a gold, and it was warm, and it was like loving. And I looked at her and I said, "Will you tell me?" Because I could feel it. This is what I could feel. I could feel these three or four giant, I call them angels, giant men or giant, and they were at the foot of her bed. And I said, "Do you see those angels?" And she had this serene smile on her face and said, "Yeah, yeah." And I just sat with her. And then I went to her side where she was, because I was still at the foot of the bed too, next to the angels. And then I went to her and I just held her hand and I did all my communication through my hand, like, you're loved, and you're not going by yourself, this whole thing. And I kissed her on top of the head before I left. I walked out into the room. I could feel the cool air hit me, and it's like I woke up. It's like I had been in a trance, and I woke up, and I just couldn't believe that I experienced this gift to have been in this situation. She passed away a few days later, and I went to see how the daughters were doing, and then I said, "Do you mind if I walk into that room where she was?" Because I wanted to see if it still felt the same way.
Had an afterglow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was vacant. It
Yeah.
was vacant. It was like a cold, sterile, kind of boring institutional room. And so I knew that what I had felt was, and what I experienced was real. It's like I do know that I feel like I've been honing in on these gifts. And yeah, I know people call it the woo or whatever, but I'm all for it. I mean, I think that's how we're going to get to understanding, like you said, our cousins, our universal cousins. I mean,
Well, the people who do the CE5 stuff, and I'm not here promoting Dr. Greer, okay, but the technology of the CE5 process of
mhm.
human instigated conversation with ET, and I'm going to say ET and above, okay,
Yeah.
um, is has rooted in good theory. In fact, when I was writing my newspaper column, I wrote a newspaper column for the Syracuse New Times from 2013 to 2019. And in the last couple of years, I wrote, because I had been a monastic, I wrote several columns about the praises of CE5 process, a little bit of high level stuff about it. And I even wrote a couple of them. Hey, by the way, if you're working with CE5 process and you really want to have good, effective meditation, do this, do this, do this. And don't eat a pepperoni pizza with lots of onions and garlic before you do the meditation, because you're going to get all gassy and that interferes.
Yeah.
In monastery, we don't serve on a retreat weekend. We don't serve anything with onions and garlic, and that will make you gassy.
Mhm.
No turnips, all that food. No, 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 no. We don't do that. And I explained that kind of an article, and I
Yeah.
got a lot of mail. It was really, really quite surprising. But a lot of people are syncing up on this idea of trying to reach out and touch somebody, and I'm all for it, because you find yourself not being scared. You find out if you do manage to touch it, even a small, small way,
Yeah.
you
I
find it to be
find it
loving. It's loving.
Yeah, it definitely is. I find it as it in many ways for me, I feel like all of a sudden I'm in a tunnel, or I'm in this vortex. I feel like whoever, because usually I'm driving down the road and I'm thinking, I should check on so and so. So I go and check on so and so who I had learned had cancer a year earlier, and I walk in there and I had the same experience. It was like, oh my God, I am here not for the reasons I thought I was going to be here, but I'm here to, and I think my message that I was here to tell her was that you will always have that love, you'll always have that connection with your husband that will never go away, and it'll, just to bring peace, because oh my God, she was like really broken up that she couldn't stay in her body. But it was funny that when I first walked in the room, I said, okay, I know the angels are in here. And this other woman was talking to me. And the way I got invited into the place, it was like I was the only stranger in the whole room. They said, oh, come on in. Because they thought the person that let me in thought I was somebody else. And so it was kind of a little bit awkward, but I was calm enough to say I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, and anyway, I told her that that love is endless. It doesn't end. And, yeah.
I'll give you one along the same line. When I was a temporary monastic, temporary nun, the one time I came to town, he had dinner with there was like 35 monks and nuns, mostly nuns, and he had dinner with us. And then after dinner, as he was milling around with us, he touched a handful of us and said, I want you to come to my class on Saturday afternoon. And he came over to me and he looked at me and said, you've seen death, you've confronted death, haven't you? And I said, yeah, I'm a ex-combat soldier. Yeah, you think? He says,
Yeah.
come to my class on Saturday afternoon. And what he took us through was an all afternoon teaching for a set of rites called POA. And it's the passing rites. Now, the easy way to explain that, think you're going to get ready to shut down your computer. Do you pull the plug? Not with Windows, you don't. You pull the plug in, it's going to mess things up.
Right.
You do a normal shutdown. Okay. POA process is a process of literally set this person who's getting ready to pass. You set them up in bed as straight as you can get them, and you talk them into their last meditation. And you literally talk them to death. You give them a guided meditation that ends with them having their final passage. Okay. And their life force coming out through their central channel, a little pea-sized beam. And so that's when I got to do that chaplaincy up in upstate New York, those 4 hospitals. I got these calls at 12:30 at night, and I still had a corporate job. Remember, I was doing it remotely, so I was up in all hours of the night helping these people pass.
So you felt exactly what
Been
I'm
there. I
talking about.
understand that
Yeah.
whole golden light
Wow.
thing in the room. You don't see it, but you feel it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I just think that's I'm just thankful that there are people out there like yourself that are helping people, because I do know that that, like the angels, if you want to call them that, I just feel like with all the indoctrination in Christianity, Catholicism, that sometimes it's really hampered, at least me, to come up with a better vocabulary of words to use instead of saying angels.
I lean away from angels, but think of it as it might be your guides.
Guides. There you go.
Okay. And sometimes, depending upon the philosophy you talk to, the guides are actually people who are on a similar karmic path with you, and they can't go to the next place on the tour until you leave this realm and get on the bus with them. That's the only way I can explain it,
Yeah.
and that's why they're there waiting for you. Come on, let's go, and that's what it seems. There seems to be an element of that as well for like moving up to this higher state of ascension, so to speak. That's what it seems like, and
Yeah.
I've done enough
Yeah.
passing rituals to see that.
Yeah. And you were talking earlier about um our cousins from the universe, and I've had experiences with the gray that was behind me and told me not to turn around. He or she didn't want me to be afraid. I was out in this place called East Gate, which was at the end of a runway at
Where's that?
RAF Woodbridge
Oh,
in
okay,
England.
okay,
Yeah, I was stationed over in England.
okay.
And it was right up against this forest that was right behind me. I mean, it was really, Suffolk County was known for being, that's the witchcraft capital of the world.
Yeah.
And and my job was not to be afraid. I mean, it was like I had to act because I was like one woman out of many men in the squadron of in security police. I think they just opened it up to women like 5 years earlier. So anyway, and I didn't turn around because I was too tired anyway. I said, no, I don't care. Okay, you can whatever but it would flash in my mind. The other one was the one that was probably the scariest for me, but I knew he was busy, so I guess I just knew. I was walking toward. I was in the bomb dump, getting ready midnight, getting ready to check the buildings, and there was a like a mantid, like a huge giant praying mantis up, pacing back and forth in this area, and he told me not to go. So I turned around, did an about face, and went back to my gate check and was listening to Annie. The sun will come up tomorrow.
But people are always thinking they you hear about ET and we hear about the Greys. Okay.
Mhm.
We hear about the Pleiadians. Oh, they're the golden children. I don't know where I've been, the prettiest things in life are usually the most dangerous. So I tend to shy away from that a little bit.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because the Palladians is one that does come in mind. There's some attraction that I have to this star cluster.
I don't have an edge. I don't have an axe to grind with them, but
Yeah.
I tend to be reserved about the ones who come here supposed to be sweetness and light.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, when you sit there and talk about ET, I've had people say, "Would you believe in ETs?" I said, "It's not so much believe in ETs as much as I'm aware of them." And I
Mhm.
said, "They're around us all the time, but just most people don't have the view of reality wide
Mm.
enough, elastic enough to perceive it. Most people don't perceive most of the paranormal stuff that goes on around us on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And so
Do you think the
when you
ones who
said,
do? Do you think
well,
the
yeah,
ones?
there's a lot of us that do, but
Yeah, but do you think
but
the ones who do it usually starts in childhood, or does it start early?
some people it starts in childhood. Some people evolve into it. Some people have a profound
Mhm.
experience
Yes.
on the battlefield or in a really bad wreck or something like this. Um, different things change different people different ways, right? But when you said the big praying
Hmm.
mantis,
Hmm.
well, somebody asked me once, well, what do you think the ETs look like? And I says, well, tell you what, why don't you imagine Captain Kirk as a 6 foot tall praying mantis?
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
says, is that what they look like? And he says, some of them do. Okay. Now on
Yeah.
the internet, you look through some of the UFO pages, they talk about the reptilians, and they always show this
Yeah.
artwork. This guy's like,
Hmm.
it looks like he needs a case of prune juice in the worst way, and but the people I've interviewed as a journalist who have had direct contact with reptilians say, well, the ones we met were gentle,
Hmm.
soft spoken, enlightened, and
Hmm.
had a sense of humor.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
And if you look at artifacts from ancient Samaria, Mesopotamia, that area,
Mhm.
you'll see these figurines that look an awful lot like um, humanoid reptilians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And they were supposedly like the goddesses who gave us, that taught us laws, taught us how to
Mhm.
cultivate things. Do you know why they talk about Adam and Eve, and oh, Eve ate the apple. That's the metaphor.
Right.
Okay, what was it that threw man out of the Garden of Eden when we were a hunter-gatherer culture and then turned into a agriculture culture? Okay,
You're talking about the snake, or are
no,
you talking about?
well, if it's the snake, it's the reptilian advisors and
Oh, okay.
teachers. Okay, think about that. But back in the time, 12,000 years ago, when the tribes went out and did their hunting and came back with all the flesh, all the dead
Mhm,
animals they nailed, during their
mhm.
hunting trip. It was a big feast back at the clan centers. Okay, closest thing to what you call almost like a little city.
Yeah.
And the people who were hosting that, those feasts went on as long as the beer held out. And the
Hmm.
beer was grown from natural grains, but they were natural grains and they ran out very quickly. And so it was the development of farming that increased the volume of the grains necessary to make beer.
Hmm.
That was the falling from grace, that we're no longer living on the land anymore. We're now in this culture where we have to grow this stuff and all this stuff.
Oh, interesting.
And
We
in
have to thank
Göbekli
the
Tempe,
bear for that.
in Turkey, Göbekli Tempe, get it, 12,000-year-old thing they found buried in the dirt.
Mhm.
It turns out that they found in each of the areas turned out to be, they had carvings of certain animals. Each of those areas turned out to be certain clan centers.
Oh,
Okay. And I got this from the Smithsonian. Okay. These things turn out to be clan centers, but they found evidence of beer brewing. And this was about the time they're making the change over to agricultural
mhm.
production versus going out and harvesting it from the wild.
Right. Wow. That's just,
But
yeah,
I'm
it's just
not the
fascinating.
archaeologist, or the
No,
anthropologist,
so, yeah,
but I've done enough other reading to knit the pieces together.
yeah, yeah. And what I was doing was, on my own journey is having seen the UFO sighting and having all those paranormal things. This was way back in 1980 at Bentwaters and Woodbridge. That um, it's followed me over my life. It seems like I kind of feel as if whatever we experienced then, information was given to us. And it's I mean, some people it's been in binary code, other people it's been just different things. And for me uh, it was through my dreams that it took me to a place. Actually, it turned out I got a complimentary copy of National Geographic. This a place called Poza Azul, which is it's a water, this small kind of pond. It's in Mexico, and about 50 miles north of it is a place called the Zone of Silence. Now,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mentioned earlier that they were playing around with radar jamming, all these experiments not long before I got there. And now I'm having dreams of a place that's a no frequency zone and high UFO activity. And and it was
And
there.
magnetic anomalies as well. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And heavy lee lines and just a lot of things that it's like the more you know, the more you're thinking, oh man, how do you, how much information can you, keep learning about? I mean, so then I was trying to figure out, well, because I'd look up in the sky and I could only see through my peripheral vision the star cluster Pleiades, and I couldn't figure it out, but I felt like whatever that cluster is, it kind of looked like a birthmark or a big freckle, and but I was always fascinated that I couldn't see it straight on. And actually, I went up to Mount Lemmon not long ago, where they have the big observatories that the public can go to.
Yep.
And I asked that question. I'm like, I don't know, isn't that strange? He goes, no, there's a lot of things that you can only see with your peripheral vision that you can't see head on. Anyway, to make a long story short, uh, uh, I found, so I knew Pleiades was a part of this journey I'm on. And, you know, and what happened is this place not far, about a mile, maybe half a mile from RAF Woodbridge, where there's a lot of orbs and a lot of UFO activity. There are these mounds. In fact, they made a movie out of it called The Dig, and it's
Oh yeah, that was good. Yeah,
yeah,
I saw
it's
that. I
called
saw that.
yeah, it's called the place is called Sutton Hoo, Suttonhoo, and what those mounds are actually shaped like the star cluster, yeah, Pleiades.
And they've got something weird quantum going on around them because somebody locked the camera down,
Hmm.
and every now and then they saw these uh, sparkles. Sparkles are dead spots.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
and they had since been analyzed by quantum physicists and said
Mhm.
quantum things sometimes blink in and blink out of existence, and that's what it looks like it's happening right there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And often like the gray and the mantid, the way I saw, I didn't see directly with my eyes. It was like a flash, like a short video clip of him pacing back and forth. I'm like, okay, I see what he's doing. He's busy, and I can't be scared. That was, and that's probably the downfall. Most people get scared. And even
But
me.
that base was also a NATO base, right?
Mhm, yes, it was.
Okay, well think about Rendlesham
Yeah.
Forest. They had the big concrete revetments with the
Mhm.
nukes and everything,
Yeah.
and so it doesn't surprise me that you were dealing with the manta there.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, well, the funny thing too about it is that the area, the it was now at the non-munition storage area, because I couldn't go into the weapons storage area where the nukes were. It was just the rule,
Obviously,
you know.
well, that was a two-man rule area anyway. So
Yeah, yeah. And but what happened was that they were actually renovated, because the non-munition storage area had once been the weapons storage area. And before they turned it into the non-munition, they had renovated it. So whatever was under it was they the government put millions of dollars into it. And everyone thought it was strange because the F4s left, and we got the A10s came in, the one with the Warthog Gatling
mhm.
gun. So it was nice for me because it made the base quieter, and we had less uh, alerts. But that's when I experienced that mantid in there, and I know he wasn't happy. Whatever was going on, he was in deep thought, pacing back and forth. But yeah, and it wasn't far from that Sutton. The location wasn't far from that Sutton Hoo and Rendlesham Forest, the whole thing. But um, so I've actually been working with, and the other thing that's weird is that I've been talking to this one guy, Wayne Herschel. He does a lot of the
I've heard the name. I don't know him
yeah.
personally.
Yeah, he does a lot of archaeological, he finds things and finds connections with symbols and whatnot. And he was one that pointed out that the rocks were shaped like Pleiades. And I also mentioned to him, I said, when the UFO flew down, at first I thought it was a cargo plane coming in at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then it went up, down, left, right, kind of like the sign of the cross, and
Hmm.
then it broke into three pieces and then flew over, at astronomical speed. But I found that interesting too, that the number three seems to come up, and there are connections between in the history of, say, the number three.
369. Talk to Nikola Tesla.
Wow, there you go.
To understand 369 will just show you the mechanics of the universe.
Wow, wow.
And he said that 100 years ago.
Yeah, so interesting. I'm just,
Now, so along the line we were talking about, especially like in England, we've got all these places like Stonehenge, and there's a place like that in France, and there's a number of
Mhm.
these places. A lot of them have either some kind of a cave or some kind of structure that lights up at one of the solstices or something on that order.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And frequently the stones around them have something like this carved on them.
Wow.
Okay. Something like that. Or the stone is completely covered in these things that look like galaxies.
Yeah.
The periods of these, I wrote a paper about this for Wiccan magazine. I'll send you the link to it.
Oh, thank you.
And it is it talks in 1997, a scientist who worked for the company SRI, who was the people who developed remote viewing for the CIA.
Okay.
He, this scientist, a guy by the name of Dr. James Spotswood, classically trained physicist, and he had taken 2200 ESP type test, telepathy tests. He didn't care what it was, but he looked at what the weighting of it was how it was a good, bad, or ugly, or was it excellent, whatever. Okay. And he ranked them all, and then he calculated for the location where these tests had been done what the sidereal time was for that particular location at the time of that test. And he found out the astronomical time, which is a 23-hour, 56-minute day. It is not 24 hours. It is 23 hours, 56 minutes.
Wow.
So what's overhead right now is overhead tomorrow, 4 minutes earlier, and 4 minutes earlier the day after that. And after about a week, it's overhead. What was overhead right now will be overhead 30 minutes earlier. Okay. It's about 4 minutes a day. And there was a peak at 1330, which is 1:30 astronomical time.
Yeah.
Okay, I did that term for the listeners who don't know what 1330 is. And 1330 for a half hour either way, the yield on ESP type things goes up by 450%. An hour either way of that central point of 1330, it goes up an average of 250%.
Yeah, what's interesting, right now it's 13:30 as you're talking.
Now that's 13:30 on your normal clock.
Your
terrestrial clock. Remember, this is
like you said,
time.
Yeah.
But actually right now, let's see, I'm in Ohio right now. So we just came out of the 13th. I know what the sidereal time is because I was looking at it yesterday. We just came out of that 2-hour window.
Okay.
Now, roughly where are you?
I'm in Tucson.
Okay, so Arizona. You guys are just entering it.
Yeah.
Okay, now in a couple of weeks, it's going to be even earlier because remember, it's moving earlier every day. But I got my calculators out, my star calculators and all this stuff out, and I calculated the solstices in various great megalithic shrines, Chaco Canyon, Karnak Temple in Egypt. It lights up like Newgrange in Ireland does on winter solstice morning for 3 days. It lights up, And I started calculating all this stuff. Our ancients knew about this time period. Okay, now it isn't always winter solstice. It's about 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, depending upon what your latitude is. Okay.
Yeah.
But in other places, for other, the Catholic Church stole a lot of pagan holidays. Okay. They built their temples on pagan worship grounds, things like that. Okay. Trying to make it familiar. So I decided to run the pagan holidays. And the time I lived in Syracuse, New York. So I did it against Syracuse's longitude. And long time ago, when I'd only been into craft about 8 or 9 years, probably about 8 years, a Druid priest I knew invited me over to do a ceremony. Remember, I was still a boy person in those days. Or there were some of the younger priests and everything. So we said, okay, fine. And he wanted to sit up there, and we sat there and feasted and drank all night on the eve of Imbolc, which is February 2nd. So on evening of February 1st, we were all, toasting and everything. And then he took us outside in our kilts in this 1.5 feet of snow out there at about 3 o'clock in the morning. I never could understand why that was important. And then here I am 20 years later doing these calculations, and I find out that on Imbolc, that's when that peak period is, about 3:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Okay. And I calculated back against every major pagan holiday, and 4 of them. And remember, as Catholics, we did the Angelus every day, 6 o'clock in the morning prayers, noontime prayers, and 6 o'clock in the evening prayers. The church bell would ring.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? It lines right up with the Angelus. So it's a magical time. And the season for it was usually within plus or minus a week either way, to be in that 2-hour window. Okay, so for a 14-day period, a 7-day season on either side of the pagan holiday, you were in the zone, provided depending upon what time of the year you were doing it. Okay, and it was amazing. Same thing with Chaco Canyon out west. They had the solstices coming up. They had them marked. They had the midday things marked for certain holidays, and everything that the archaeologists have measured out there lined up for local sidereal time for those particular seasons. It was crazy.
Where is that canyon?
It's out in New Mexico.
Okay. Yeah.
It's one of those ones where they got a lot of dugouts, circular dugouts and things. You look it up. It's Chaco, CHACO, something like that. You'll find it. It's easy to find on search. But that's I'll send you the link to the Wicca magazine article. In fact, if
I appreciate
your
that.
listeners want to hit it, if you get on in your search engine, go for Wicca magazine 13:30. 13:30 or pagan clock. Go Wicca magazine pagan clock, and you'll get this web page with a rather large article that I wrote as a research paper about when this stuff peaks. So I teach all my students. Now, I have some students very crass about it and say, "Oh, it's wrong season. I'm not going to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do the ritual." Okay, you don't have to, but if it's something really, really important and you want that extra horsepower behind it, 250 to 500%, you're going to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. If that's when it is. Right now, like I said, right now, here in Cleveland, we just came out of that window about 20 minutes ago. So
it's funny, actually, when I saw the UFO sighting over in England, it was in February in 1980, and it was at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, well, here's one other thing that's goofy about this. Remember that thing I showed you? This?
Yes.
You go outside a lot of those megalithic structures where people that light, when these places where it lights up on solstice or the equinox or something like this, you find these stones carved like this, and they're consistent, different places. What that means is if you go there and you get yourself into a ritual meditative state, the chances that you're going to be able to hear the universe in your mind are greatly amplified. So you're connecting to all the knowledge in the universe. Wow. This is what this is about. Okay. So I teach my students to meditate in that window. And remember, this window is for a mystic. If you're doing active magic type of work, you're communicating your intentions to the great consciousness to manifest something or to steer something a certain way. Or if you're contemplative, you go into that window, quiet your mind, and say, I'm open to information. I'd like to know about this. Okay, remember, you're saying that in a nonverbal way. And it doesn't come in like a booming voice, but what happens is it comes in like a quiet download. And the next time somebody asks you a question about that particular thing, you seem to just know all about it, My Lama taught me that one.
Wow. You seem like you've really learned a lot, and you've found your way around also a lot of people that have a lot of wisdom.
We have a joke about this, though.
What?
We have a joke about that.
Okay.
All the knowledge in the universe and all the control and magic at my fingertips, and it still costs me $5 for a cup of coffee at Starbucks. So
there you go. Yeah. Well, One of the symbols that I find that I kind of wonder about is it's a triangle with on the right side of the lower part of the triangle, there's a circle, and then there's another circle that is on the upper side of where the point of this triangle is. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I know that's something that one of the other, I think, Tech Sergeant uh, Jim Peniston saw when he had the alien craft had landed, and he walked around it.
I gave that to my remote viewing students in a remote viewing target card,
Hmm.
serial number on the outside, but the target card had that. And the question written on the target card is, what is this? Where is this from? And their answer came back, this is like a flag from an off-world culture. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah,
And it's consistent with what Pence and those guys saw, and that was
yeah.
before I knew knew of I knew
Jim
that much about.
Peniston.
I didn't know much about Remerson Forest. I've met both those guys, and
Hmm.
very nice guys too. They're very nice
Yeah,
guys.
yeah. Well, yeah. It's funny because I knew John when he first got there. He looked like he had this movie star look about him. He was like tall, kind of dark and handsome and that kind of thing. And he really,
Tall. God, he towered over me.
yeah, 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 yeah. But then when he opened his mouth, it was like, oh my God. Uh, all I could think of when I heard he was one that saw the UFO, because when I saw mine, I had to report it because it flew over the base and, because of
Yeah,
nuclear
yeah, yeah.
bombs and all this other stuff. So I took a lot of heat for it. They didn't do any kind of investigation. Um, and then I left the base 2 weeks before the sighting occurred in at late December of 1980. So I didn't hear about that till almost 15 years later that it came back. I was like, what the heck? And then when I found out John Burroughs saw it, I was thinking, couldn't happen to a better guy. Just because he was uh, back in the day, he could be a little bit. He was like my annoying brother. Let's just put it that way. It's like couldn't happen to a better guy. Just slap him around like my brother Harold.
He didn't want to I was on with Linda Moot Howe, and he
Mhm.
did a radio show with her.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And the night I was on, he begged off, didn't want to be on the show with me.
Oh, oh,
I never was able to find out why, so
yeah, yeah. I don't know.
um,
Well, yeah,
maybe the fact that I'm a tranny, I don't know. That might be it. So there are some people who are
they're lost.
twitch because of that.
Yeah,
It's no
no,
big
well,
deal. It's no big deal.
yeah, it's they're lost. I actually work on every Wednesday. I go to a place called Bicas, Bicas. What we do is we dismantle bicycles and
Uh-huh.
recycle the parts and rebuild bicycles and give them to, children who cannot afford a bicycle.
Yep.
And the majority of the people who work there are transgendered. And they
Yeah.
wear a pin. Some of them will wear a pin to say, my pronouns are they and them, and he and him, and
I,
and
I
I'm just
yeah.
so proud to be around them. I just feel like, you know, people have to understand we're fluid, you know.
Yeah, well, that. I think that's the biggest point that I could tell anybody, because people say, well, why did you go through all that? It was part of a spiritual evolution, and
Mhm.
I didn't know it was one when I was going through it. All I understood was there was something more than just that. The answer came down to is, I know I'm not my body. And I know
Yeah.
that what I'm trying to express here, and you listen to my voice, I don't try to talk like this anymore. I
Oh,
don't,
boy.
I don't try and talk like that anymore. Good morning, Cheryl Costa. Can I help you? Yeah. And when
Who
I
does that
learned that
sound
from
like?
Dustin Hoffman in
Yeah, that's
Tootsie.
it.
The guy,
Tootsie,
I was in
Tootsie.
transition in those days, and the
Oh,
idea of
okay.
having a little bit, it was the idea of having the actor's cue of saying, being a little bit more breathy, and I had those nice big glasses and everything like that, and that helped sell the whole persona. But but what
Yeah.
was fun was when I worked at Lockheed. I was in a field service unit for
Mhm.
military products. And if I got a head cold, suddenly I'd come into work in the morning and I sound like Mr. Worf from Star Trek. Okay. I'm really, really deep, and there's nothing I can do about it. Right.
Yeah.
So I would answer Cheryl Costa's line, "Can I help you?" And it's usually double bass voice, So, is Cheryl there? I said, no, I'm her intern. Can I help you?
Where you were you out in like Herndon or what's that place called? Uh,
Bethesda.
were you in Bethesda? Is that
Well,
where?
okay. I joined a company up in Owego, New York. Okay.
Okay.
And then I transferred down to Manassas, Virginia.
Okay.
Okay. And then I transitioned in Manassas, and that was a miserable experience. And
What
then,
about what years were you there in that
let's
area?
see, got there in 86 and then transferred up to Gaithersburg, Maryland, around 90,
Okay.
91.
You
Okay.
and our paths crossed then because I
We
was
were
living.
marching in the same neighborhood, hon. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
was at one point. I was living in. Oh man, I lived all over the place. I was living in Northern Virginia. Then I was living in Germantown.
well, where were you in Northern Virginia? Curious. So I lived in Manassas for a while.
I was there from 1984. I was stationed at the Defense Systems Management College at Fort Belvoir.
Oh God, yeah, I know. Oh, I'm very familiar with Fort Belvoir.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So I was there.
okay, so what happened was I was at Manassas initially. When I got done transitioning, I wanted a clean start someplace, so I got a transfer to Gaithersburg. At this point, I made the transition out of field support and went into the IT business in the company,
Okay.
and I was up in Gaithersburg. And then we got sold to about 6 years later. We got sold to Lockheed. We were
Hmm.
IBM Federal Systems at that time, and then I ended up as soon as we became Lockheed. I went out to represent our facility, um, eh, other IT people. It's the end of the Cold War.
Yeah, yeah.
The bigger company bought all the little companies,
Hmm.
and our counterparts like Boeing, they bought a whole bunch of little support companies and things, and all the people who'd been subcontractors to them, essentially. And I went out to San Jose, California, the Marietta area out there, and I went out there and somebody was we were at this talk about computer security, and this guy was trying to give these slides, and I realized 4 slides in he didn't know anything about the slides, and somebody else made them for him.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I stopped him. I says, "Are you familiar with this topic, or are you just giving somebody else's presentation?" He said, "Well, I was asked to come out here and present, but somebody else did it." I said, "I can talk to those slides." He said, "Can I? Would you mind?" And he's no. So I got up there and I talked to his slides, and I had a whiteboard there, and I gave him a 25, 30-minute chalk talk on this problem with computer
Wow.
viruses. And some lady in the back of the auditorium who I could not see, all I could see was this silhouette, right?
Hmm.
I want you, you know, and and
And you
I
said
ended
yes, and everybody else wants me too. So
well, what happened was she was like the assistant to the director of corporate security, IT security in the company. So they asked me to go interview with the president of the division for that. And I said, "All right." Understand, just about the time they make an appointment for me, I am now in Buddhist robes.
okay.
Okay. So I show up, high collar, yellow shirt, burgundy, buzz cut, the whole thing. The lady talks to me for 10 minutes and she says, she's got this big stack of folders on this little side desk in her office.
Hmm.
And she says, "You've only got an associate's degree." And that's all I had at that time.
Hmm.
And she says, "All the people in that stack have got master's degrees. I don't think I can use you."
Oh, wow.
And
Well, that was
I sat there
BS.
for a second. I thought about it. I looked at her and I said, "Did you look at my resume?" And she says, "Yeah." I said, "I've got something none of those people have." This is what's said. I said, "I'm a mystery writer and I think like the bad guys." Okay. And she says, she looks at my refer, the people you sent, tell them for references. She says, "If I call you references, what will they say?" I said, "Call them up." So she calls up one person, and she calls him. He was a director of security at Gaithersburg. Says, I got Cheryl Costa here. I'm thinking about maybe having her in security. Is she somebody I should have, you know? And this is the director of security there. He says, yeah, she broke a fencing ring. I took her down to the police department, and she broke in the laptops and told us who owned them. And we contacted the people, and we found out that their stuff had been stolen out of their cars, you know, and we broke a fencing ring only because she was able to break into the computers. Okay. She calls up the next person. That would be the director of security at the Discovery Channel, a friend of mine, Chris Murray. She says, I got Cheryl Costa here interviewing for a job. I'm not sure if I should hire her. And you could hear Chris on the other end of the phone. Oh, God, you want her. She thinks different than everybody else in security. He says, how does she think different? She thinks like a freaking terrorist, you know. That's a quote. That's a quote.
Yeah, that's a good, that really is, that's the kind of person I want.
I got the job, and from there on, I was a IT security guru for Lockheed. And see, IBM Federal Systems, we were plugged into IT. We were originally IBM. So we knew how to spell virus. Okay. Lockheed didn't know how to spell virus. They did not have very much expertise. And it turned out, with all the divisions, it turned out to be 6 of us who knew the topic inside and out. So we ended up being the people who designed and implemented antivirus distribution for all the little companies and bigger corporation that we needed to protect the company. This was all going on around 96, 97, 98 timeframe.
Okay.
Crazy stuff going on in the defense industry.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, I was on active reserves. I was working at the 55th MMC, right across the street from the Defense Intelligence Agency near Fort Belvoir.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll give you one. I was in Navy in submarines. I was a senior electronic warfare specialist. I did radar. I did signals analysis, gathered ELENT. Okay. They found out I had a dark room. They sent me to Periscope photography school. Then I was doing photo lent, you know, all that stuff. Okay. All right. So I'm out. I have become Cheryl, Miss Corporate America with that high Southern voice, honey, you know. And
you're great.
And then
I love you.
But people have asked me, when you came out of the monastery, why didn't you get poofed up again? And there's this fallacy. A lot of people think because somebody goes through a gender change, we come out looking like Vegas showgirls. We don't.
Yeah.
Although I got a real killer glamour shot. But the bottom line is that when you came out of the monastery, we gave that up as a prideful vanity thing. And we have a joke about it. You can take the nun out of the monastery, but you can't take the monastery out of the nun. And I just never re-embrace it. So I haven't colored my hair since 1996. And while you see gray here, but you still see a lot of brown. For somebody who's 7 years old, that's not too bad, is it?
I think your hair looks great. I really do. Yeah, your style is
the only time I do makeup is if I have to make a television appearance and they got a makeup artist here. I said, don't vamp me up, just smooth me out for the camera. Okay. Now I still do live action role play gaming. Yes, I do makeup for that if it's necessary. The same thing if I do television for some kind or stage for performance. I used to be a lot heavy in community theater. Yes, I'll do theatrical makeup, but for my own vanity, I do not wear cosmetics. I do not color my hair.
Yeah. I don't either, but I never have. I think I've got more boy in me than girl. So
okay. Well, the reason I was getting to that, this is about 1990. Okay, I'm still at Manassas. And I get a phone. It's just before the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
Okay. Go over to liberate Kuwait and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was just when I got my commission as a second lieutenant in the Army, leading the safety of the Air Force. And now I'm at officer training, officer basic course, learning how to be a supply quartermaster.
Did you have to go back to Lackland? To the OCS?
No. They it was 1 week on demand for 18 months and 2.
Oh, that's how they do it. Okay.
2-week periods through the. I was with the.
It's like reserve officers do. Yeah.
I was with the DC National Guard at that time going.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's same thing. Well, along that line, 1990 timeframe. I get this phone call from this guy I went through electronic warfare school with and analysis school with. He calls me up and says, "Hey, come on, I'm in the Army now." I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "We're up here at Fort Meade. Hey, you're just down there in Laurel, right?" I mean, 10 minutes away, right?
Yeah.
He says, "Come on up and see us." And I said, "Why?" He said, "We'd like to get you into our reserve unit." I said, "There's been some changes in my life, you know." And he says, "No, come on up and see us. We'll talk. Yeah, we've changes. Yeah, we've all been divorced. Don't worry about it." So I said, "What's this about?" He says, "Well, the problem is this." He said, "When we were leaving the analysis business in the Navy, it was starting to become computerized and didn't need manual analysis with us with books and things doing the analysis of the signals and understanding what we're looking at from a radar. We're looking at a radar signature on the scope. We can sit there and tell you, what kind of a ship it's on or what kind of a purpose it is, And I said, "Okay, I'll come up Saturday morning. What time? Tell me how to get there." And he told me how to get there. No problem. So I just dressed like a normal day at corporate, Miss Southern IT professional, full makeup and everything. And I went trotting in there and in heels, and he looks at me and he says, "Oh God, Cheryl Costa, what happened to you?" And I said, "Submarines." The joke was, the nuclear reactor, radiation, all that stuff.
Yeah. I like it.
You get more radiation out on the beach than you do on a nuke. But he says, "What the hell?" And I says, "It's been a funny journey, my friend." But he sat down and told me, and what the deal was the reserve units had gotten all this manual technology. And they needed to retread some people who knew how to do manual analysis because they were getting ready to go into the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't think I'll pass the physical." They got prohibitions on that. I says, "We'll get a waiver." About a week later, I get a letter from the assistant director of reserve manpower saying, "We will give you a waiver. We need your skill." Okay, so I was going to go up and take the physical and see if they were going to bring me in as a warrant officer or something,
Wow.
which is what they were talking about doing, And my partner of that time sat there and looked at the letter, folded it up, walked over to the fireplace, threw it in the fire. Says, "You've been a warrior long enough." So,
Yeah. Oh wow. Wow. Yeah. It's funny is that, and I think it was a time when Stephen Greer had that disclosure project, and he was meeting at the press center. I was supposed to be one of the people there,
press
and
club. Yeah.
the press club. I was supposed to be one of the people there, and I was ready to go, the whole thing, and my partner at the time, she pretty much told me, "No, you don't want to do that. You don't want to go. You don't." And it's like part of me was like, I want to go, but
Yeah.
I didn't go. And I listened,
I'm
and
sort of in that situation right now. In 2019, we have a number of UFO lobbyists in DC. I'll just refer to them as the usual suspects. And they called me up. We didn't know anything about COVID yet. Okay. They called me and Linda up, and they said, "You girls are the only ones who's ever done the statistics. You've done scientific research and you've done the statistics of 15, 20 years of UFOs. And if Senator Rubio gets this bill he's written attached to some kind of continuing spending bill of some sort, it might be military, it might be education.
right, they want the numbers.
They want the numbers. He said, if we have congressional hearings, you're the only people who have done the statistics and know the scale of it. Would you be willing to testify before Congress?" And Linda and I sat there and looked at him on the call and said, we were defense contractors. We spent our entire career trying not to testify before Congress. So we thought, he says, "Okay, yeah, if you need us, if they decide they want to call us, yeah, we'll come." Okay.
Yeah.
So fine. We sat down, talked about it, and said, well, no, okay, imagine the picture. It's C-SPAN. They're televising the congressional hearings on UFOs.
Mhm.
And there's going to be congressmen and senators thumbing through thick books and things.
Mhm.
I looked at Linda, I says, we got to make sure they know it's our book.
Yeah.
So we made sure the cover was bright pink. You could
I,
flag
I,
you
I,
can flag an
yeah.
aircraft in with this thing.
Well,
And go
well,
ahead.
I heard you talking about that, and it put the biggest smile on my face because you are so right that where are all the women? They've got like what, token 2 or 3 women, and some of
Yeah.
the ones they invite to conferences, most of them have blonde hair. I kind of keep,
Or sweet little young things,
yeah, yeah.
I
They,
had a Hollywood producer. I've had like 2 dozen of them approach us since our first book, the White Book, came out in 2017, our first statistics book.
Mhm.
And this was our second one. And
Great color.
thank you. Well, we dedicated it to a woman. We made it to Coral Lorenz, who was the founder of APRO, which was the predecessor to MUFON, that kind of thing. And but we wanted to make sure people knew a couple women did this book.
Yeah.
But we're going through this thing, and the people were saying to us, okay, this still might happen and everything. But I'm looking at all these conferences. You get 8 guys and 2 women or
Mhm.
1 woman.
Mhm.
Okay. But in the United States, MUFON, most of the state directors are women anymore. And
Mhm.
most of the senior investigators in those states are women. Okay. So it's kind of goofy there. But the other thing that came out of this whole thing was I had about, when the first book came out, I had over the last 3-4 years, I've had probably 2 dozen television producers of these kind of, UFO programs and
Mhm.
documentaries and things come to us. And they never seem to want to audition me and Linda. Oh, they want our data, but they don't want the 2 old gay ladies. Okay. One did. Vice.com auditioned me just as we're going into on Zoom, auditioned me just as we're going into lockdown.
Mhm.
And then during lockdown, since streaming went through the roof, all these other major media companies started buying up all these streaming operations, right? And they got sold to another very senior organization, and you would know who it was if I told you the name of it, but I can't. And they said, we don't need you.
Mm.
And another one of their people came back to me and said, well, could you give us the information, but we need a host. We need somebody who's topical. And so I said, you're telling me you need some sweet, young, fancy, pretty thing that's suitable for like TikTok and Instagram pictures and things. And you want us to feed you the data to let that person parrot our research.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
not no, but no,
Yeah. I
and
mean, yeah, I mean, I again, a good example, and I felt good about one day when I get older than I am now. Again, Grace Hopper, and she was on all these shows, and I mean, she was on David Letterman and whatnot. So it just goes to show you, it's the soul and the guts and the knowledge that's inside our heads
yes.
that you want to hear about, that comes out, resonates through our consciousness.
Well, funny thing, I had somebody the other day who is tied into that kind of industry, and he interviewed me on a thing like this. We did it on StreamYard the other night, and he said, "Are those people crazy? I
Yeah.
mean, you are a freaking live wire on camera. Why the hell haven't they talked to you? So,
Oh
my
yeah.
dear, I am diabetic, and I am coming up on my supper hour, and I am getting very lightheaded. I'm going to start
Okay.
babbling if I don't get off and go eat.
Okay. Well,
So
the
I
time
will
has
come back
come.
anytime you want to get together and do another one of
We
these.
we
Happy to give you
definitely
volume
will.
2.
We definitely will. And I just want to end it with, this is God, Aliens, and a Cup of Coffee. Lori Rayfelt here with Cheryl Costa, and you're going to come back on again because you rock. And I so enjoyed this conversation. I was really worried that we were going to talk a lot about data and numbers and graphs, and I'd have to get my daughter, who just got her degree in USC in geology, to come out here and help me.
Let me give you one statistic.
Okay.
3,135 counties in the United States. Okay.
Okay.
150 of them did not report UFOs.
Interesting.
Okay. That's for 20 years, 2001 to 2020. We'll talk numbers next time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, do we have to? Okay.